Welcome to the Silverstone Circuit in Northamptonshire, England. Our host for round 3 of the Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Silverstone opened its doors all the way back in 1948, and it's been a crown jewel of motorsports ever since. Hello, everyone. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Austin Belke. And Austin, it has been a long time since this series has last been on track, some 42 days ago.
Yeah, that's right, Jesse. I mean, there's been 2 IGTC rounds. I mean, Kyle Lamy, you couldn't have hoped for a better race, a better end to that one. And then the Spa 24, I mean, that's just a historic racetrack and a historic race in and of itself. And that was just an incredible race from start to finish. I mean, 24 hours, there was action and we had stuff to talk about. And I assume Silverstone today is going to be no different. I mean, this is one of the most, another historic racetrack, FIA Grade 1. So it's just going to be awesome. We talk about all the corner names too, all the very, very famous corners like Maggots and Tobaccots. I mean, this place requires a lot of commitment.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's going to test the mettle of all of the drivers out there. In fact, it already has in qualifying. While we're talking about the drivers, let's take a look at the entry list here today. The usual suspects in the field. Chris Sievert among the drivers to look forward to. And, of course, you can't look past your championship leader, Igor Rodriguez, in the field, looking to go for a three-peat.
Yeah, he's been on fire. I mean, if there's anything to stop him, it's probably going to have to be himself, but he's just been so 100% on the mark all the time. I highly doubt that's going to happen as you continue to go through the rest of the field. To look at our entry list for today, Jonathan Clifford, the highest number you can have out of 3 digits there. Last one on the board, Jesse.
Certainly is. We talked briefly about the championship. Let's show you the championship. Igor Rodriguez leading for Williams, 72 points, 36 points around. He's been doing some damage. That's the maximum it could be. And these are all of the challengers further back in the field. These are the drivers certainly that need to get a move on to get themselves back inside the top 10.
Yeah, good to see there, John Sievert there, Chris Sievert in the 4th position overall. And yeah, you can just see, I mean, it's really hard to score points in this series, as it should be. I mean, these are some of the best drivers, right, in the world. And now we look at the silver standings. You got Nick DeSantis up there for Pit Stop UK. He's been another driver really on fire, not to the same extent that Rodriguez has been, but this series and, championship in and of itself has just been amazing to watch.
Certainly has. This silver championship is just heating up. There are so many drivers within striking distance, within a point of each other, and a couple, of course, inside the top 5, tied for 5th. Incredible scenes here today from Silverstone in the UK. It's about as good of weather as you could possibly imagine. Bright blue sky, a little bit of cloud cover, but nothing threatening, at least for the time being. The temperatures are cooperating. It's about time to go racing, partner.
It sure is. I mean, I couldn't imagine a better time to go racing here at Silverstone. The sun is out. It's an absolutely beautiful day. If we were there in real life, it might be a little hot, a little sticky there as we continue to look at here the qualifying order. Rodriguez obviously picking up right where he left off, a whopping 0.2 of a second there over Negrini.
Yeah, certainly not really wasting any time trying to continue their streak. But if there's anything that we can take from this qualifying, look at those times. They're all about a 10th or so off of each other. That's not enough to pull away on a lot of these straights around here.
No, it certainly is. Just the length of some of these straightaways and the size of the hole that these cars will punch through the air, it's going to allow for a lot of drafting capabilities, and we might even see a couple slingshot opportunities as they go into the hard braking with some of these corners. So it should be a really awesome race today, and good to see as well a lot of the pro guys mixed in with the silver. It's going to be really awesome to see as the battles happen between the classes as well with each other.
Keep in mind, you only get championship points inside of your own class, but just because that's the case doesn't mean you're not going to have to race the other class. And race the other class, just like Austin said, you certainly will. A full field of cars here, 30-plus strong for the middle round of the championship. 5 rounds in the series. This marks round number 3. And again, we talked about the weather being beautiful, the cars looking fantastic, everyone making their final adjustments, sitting on the grid, getting ready to go here. Austin, I'm sure you've been in this situation before. What's the driver's mentality like sitting on the grid, getting ready to go?
At first, I mean, you have the butterflies in your stomach, that sort of excitement, jubilation. You're just excited to get this thing going, but you're also kind of worried, right? I mean, this is basically the last time in the race that you'll be able to catch your breath, aside from when these drivers have to go down pit road. So right now, you're going through your checklist. Do I have my water next to me? Is the fan on next to me to make sure I stay cool? Is is my blinds closed? That way I don't have any glare off my television screen unless you're in VR, in which case you're going to get even hotter. Is the door closed so the dog doesn't come in here and mess with me? There's just a bucket list full of things that you have to make sure are all checked off, and it's just like a real life race car driver or race team would have. Make sure everything has a place and it's in its place.
Anytime I'm sitting on the grid, I'm thinking about what could possibly go right, what could go wrong. I'm plotting my moves, and you know what always happens, folks at home? The second the green lights turn on, that plan goes completely out of the window. But you got to have the plan regardless. Going back to the weather, well, specifically 24 degrees C, the ambient temperature, 32 degrees C, the track temperature. And if you want that in North American numbers, that's 75 and 90 respectively. That is pretty decent temperatures. Kind of warm, though, for the UK.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, to be honest, it's rare that we get a day this warm here. It's even rare that we get a day that's this cloudless. Usually there's lots of clouds, there's lots of rain in the UK too. So this is just a kind of a perfect storm in a good way for Silverstone. This is just going to be a really awesome time. I'll be interested to see who can cope with the changing temperatures as we get the track either heating up or cooling down, just based on the clouds and the regular situation for the rest of the day.
I will also say, just to make sure it's not left unsaid, there is a 25% chance of rain in the forecast. We've dodged that here at the start. We know for the starting 30 minutes that is not going to factor in one way or another. We've been gifted beautiful starting conditions, but keep that in the back of your mind. It is England, after all. 25% chance of a shower today. So we'll see if that comes in to fruition. Igor Rodriguez, he's dominated the championship. He's got the maximum points you could have, and even after qualifying today, that's still true. What's the game plan for your championship leader?
Well, luckily enough for him, he's starting on pole position. So the first thing he needs to do, obviously, get a good start. Make sure if you're not side by side with somebody into turn one, that you're at least the car ahead so you can dictate the line you take through there and clear yourself from your competition as soon as possible. And then the next step is, right, they go through Abbey, Farm Curve, the loop, and then down the Wellington Straight. You need to make sure that Negrini, if he's the car in second position, is far enough back that he doesn't have the opportunity to use that slingshot move as you go into Luffield or Brooklands, because that's just because you get out of the first couple corners in the lead doesn't mean you're out of the woods yet. You still have to make sure that the guy behind you can't draft up to you and make some sort of a slingshot move going down into Brooklands. After that, just keep your eyes forward. Make sure you have a big enough lead. Don't even look in the rearview mirror. Focus out the front of the car, out the windshield, and just start putting down the same kind of laps that you did to put yourself on pole position. And then just manage your lead. It's like what people do in the hospital all the time. Nursing. You just kind of make sure you've got enough of a lead there that you're not under pressure, but you can still control the race as you like to.
Well, we've seen Igor do that all season long, not overdriving the car, not testing the limits, driving to a number, driving to where they need to be. Speaking of, it was definitely a needed pole position for Cody Sherritt, who is decently in the points championship, and they're looking to do some damage from the pole position, but more importantly for Sherritt right now, they're in amidst a bunch of pro cars. I wonder how they go about that, Austin.
Well, it's sort of one of those things, right, that we'll have in multi-class racing where you need to make sure you go out there and fight for yourself. The other drivers need to respect you just because you're in a different class, in this case the silver class, but he's done a great job to put himself in contention. He's got the pole. He'll have the win for silver if they finish how they are right now. Still an hour to go left in the race, but you need to make sure that you go up there, you don't get bullied or pushed around by the other cars. And critically for him, he's got Hutchinson in the 26 car, that Lamborghini, behind him. That's kind of a little bit of a safety net there, just to make sure that Levesque doesn't get right to his back bumper and pass him for the lead in the silver class. So he's got to make sure he's kind of in a pocket all to his own.
Of course, Levesque also looking at the championship, very much in it. He's trying to figure out where DeSantis qualified. DeSantis, of course, qualified P4 in that class and significantly down the order compared to him and Sherritt, and a little bit of breathing room for them, for the both of them. Maybe they can do battle. Quickly, before we go green, we finally want to welcome all of you in and thank you all for being with us here on the SRO Esports family of networks. No matter if you're watching over on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, welcome in. Get a drink. You're not going to miss a single lap of this. It's the Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Series here in the UK, and it's going to go live in a few corners from now. Austin, predictions?
I think we're just a great race. I think it's going to be a lot of close racing, as Silverstone always has for us. And like you said, Jesse, you're not going to want to miss a minute.
Certainly not. The cars in formation, 2x2, some 15 to 18 rows deep. As we get ready to go down the proper start-finish straight, we use the GT straight here, of course, for racing. Through Woodcote, they are lined up. Will Rodriguez get a nice jump from Negrini? We'll have to see. We'll wait for the green to fly and the flag to come down. It is a painfully long time. They get under the gantry, and they're able to stomp onto the gas as they are 2x2 through Cops this time. Rodriguez gets a nice run off of that corner as they're still 2x2 for many of the rows. They're going to want to figure that out before they get to Maggots, and certainly before they get to Beckett's. The first 5 or 6 cars all completely clear all the way back to Landry. Landry trying to figure it out. The 520 off the racetrack of Levering trying to figure out where they can rejoin the track. They have done. No further incident there. It's just about everybody gets single file as they go through the hangar straight.
And that was really, really sketchy for that 520 car, the Ferrari of Loveren. That was incredible. Just how he saved that car and got it off there as they continue to shuffle 1 to 2 wide, mostly cleaning themselves up. So far, everybody clean. No cars facing the wrong direction with a whole lot of damage. Looking here at Ayrton there, 17th position overall, the 98, excuse me.
Oh, it's going to be contact here. Stefano, contact with one of the Astons. Was that Worley? I think it might have been.
Was
that
Oliveira
sends the Aston a little back. That was actually Oliveira, I've just been told. That was the 72 where there was contact, and they've had to sort themselves out as they got a little bit squirrely into club.
Oh man, Stefano there going a lot wider than I'm sure he would have liked to into that corner. Then had the inside, did a great job to hold it. Going to have the outside for this next corner around the outside there. That's the Aston Martin, the number 72 car, Oliveira. Still doing battle 2x2. This is incredible. The amount of respect that you need to have one driver to another to go through there and give exactly the amount of space they need. No more, no less. Oh, 27 spinning around. That's the Acura.
Oh, Cardin Lou off into the background. I wonder if they got help or maybe just got a little bit too much of that AstroTurf curb as they were trying to get on the Wellington straight. But the HDP Gas Pro car spun around here. That's not what Cardin Lou wanted to have happen. Pretty much everybody else, even with the minor contact, has been able to keep it under control. We saw that with Oliveira, but unfortunately for Cardin Lou, it's a spin, and that's going to send them right to the back.
Looking here at Chris Sievert there, STR Esports, the pink car, currently in the 8th position overall, doing a really nice job here. He's, again, just kind of sandwiched in between 2 of the silver cars, having a good run so far today, but again, only 1 lap into this race.
Chris Sievert's one of those kind of race car drivers where you don't really see them make flashy moves. They're not that kind of race car driver, but they're always in the mix. They're always a car that you have to talk about, and they tend to creep into the picture, the big picture at the end. And their points haul so far through 2 rounds shows you exactly that. They've never been the story, but they've also always been a car that you've always had to look out for inside the top 5. Let's show you some of the first lap action from the field. See what happened here. This is Cardin Lou, and yeah, okay, so we'll just pinch down to the inside and 2x2 through there. Always a dangerous affair into entry, and it didn't go the way of the 27. You always, in that case, want to be the car on the outside, don't you, Austin?
Oh yeah, 9 times out of 10. Oh, there was another car there spun off, I think, just after Abby. See if we can get another look at that. But yeah, 9 times out of 10, you want to be the car on the outside, just by the way the weight is going to shift around. It looks like that was Landry in the 711 car. The Audi was facing the wrong direction, finally gets it back pointed in the right one, rejoins the pack. I'm sure he lost probably about 10 positions at the very least.
Landry able to regather it back up, but a couple of positions at least lost due to the spin. That was a big off too, but a very slick recovery. Last time we saw them, they were completely backwards, but by the time we shifted the camera, which is only a matter of a second later, they were already rejoining the race. Igor Rodriguez leads, has the quickest lap of the race. That's what the magenta #1 means. They are the holder of the quickest lap of the race. Negrini trying their best to keep in touch. It's 1 second right now. It's all gone Igor Rodriguez's way again here.
Yeah, he's just done another phenomenal job of, he did his part in qualifying, got the pole, and now he's already got a second lead back to Negrini. That's a huge accomplishment. I mean, for only being 2 laps into this race, he is absolutely flying. I think he'll just be able to put that thing on cruise control in just a little bit. And then obviously, like you mentioned, Negrini basically doing everything that they can do. Here, looking at Cody Sherritt, again, he's that leading silver car, and the closest competition he had, I believe, was Landry. That was a 711 car that was spun out, so very, very much further down the order. Now the closest competition is Levesque, so even a lot more breathing room. 3 different pro class cars now between Levesque and Sherritt.
Yeah, it's interesting. Merrick Levesque has gone backwards ever so slightly. That's given Cody Sherritt a little bit more breathing room. Sherritt's fighting in a class that he isn't a part of, and that's always a dangerous proposition, but unfortunately for Sherritt, he has to maintain the gap clearly, and if he's quicker than the cars in front, first of all, he's allowed to race. I know some people will ask that question, should he be? And the answer is absolutely he should. He absolutely shouldn't hang around. And number 2, he has to be able to maintain that gap. Merrick Levesque is not going to hang around, and if they're probably going to gain some of these spots back. Why? Because look how many of these cars are all under a blanket. Racing incident for cars 72 and 98. Racing incident again between cars 12 and 369. Those are both lap 1 incidents, and do I spy additional incidents below that? Possibly so. Race control busy early here, but a couple of, you know what that tells me, Austin? A couple of little contacts, nothing major.
Yeah, I mean, just the same thing that we saw between the 20 and the 27 car there of Car and Lou. Just a racing incident, when you're forced to race this close from one driver to another, you're bound maybe just to do a little bit of an overstepping of the bounds for that, and it was nothing egregious, right? That's where you need to have a penalty come in, as if there's something egregious. And honestly, I've yet to see something egregious here, only 3 laps into the race, but everybody so far has been extremely clean and very respectful of each other.
I was just going to say, that was one of the best starts I've ever seen with a field this size, folks. We're talking 30-plus cars firing off, all incredible pace. Nobody outside of a 58 lap time here. That is impeccable pace. Exactly what you would expect from the pinnacle of GT esports racing, obviously, but that many cars, that close together, all sorting it out, and only have a couple of racing incidents come out of lap 1 so far. That is awesome. And really, the drama didn't start until the very end of that lap, and you also have to wonder how much of that was self-inflicted.
Yeah, that's always one of the deals too, is, did somebody overheat their tires, maybe just overstep the bounds or grip themselves, or did they perhaps put themselves in a bad situation? Another here tidbit from race control, the incident between car 711 and car 420 on lap 2, a warning to car number 420, so that's why you saw that Audi there, the 711 car, facing the wrong direction as we came back to, and then we cut away from it and saw them finally rejoin the pack. That was that car, that red Audi, got back on track. So just a warning right now to Elevardo, but something to keep in mind as the race progresses.
Certainly was. Landry, of course, we saw spin around, and 420 deemed a warning for that. So that's the one penalty, if you want to call it that. A warning is not necessarily a penalty. It's a wag of the finger more than anything else, saying, hey, calm down, don't do that anymore. The race does continue. Nearly 10 minutes of the race have already gone. Rodriguez enjoys more than 1.5 seconds of a lead. Negrini isn't really fighting for the lead right now, but what he is probably more interested in is Fidel Moreira, who's getting bigger in their mirror, who's bringing Cody Sherritt along, and Jade Hutchinson.
Yeah, again, continues to be a close battle, and that's one of those situations, too, where sometimes there will be a cork in the bottle at some point, or like we talk about in Formula One, there's that DRS train. You can do the same thing here as long as you can keep up just enough with the car ahead of you through the corners. If maybe they have their setup of the car a little bit more trimmed out to get some extra speed down the straightaways, you can just tuck in behind that guy. Looking at here, Kerstetter, he's got a whopping almost 2.5 seconds up to the car ahead. That was Hutchinson, as you see a cone getting flung off into nowhere. He's got a big gap ahead of him. He's kind of we like to call it the cork in the bottle right now. He's got Chris Sievert just in behind him, just chomping at the bit to get by, but it's so hard to pass here. You really need to make sure you get a good run off a corner or do some sort of a late braking move. That was very, very ballsy there out of Sievert. Gets it done. Almost made it look easy, but a lot of respect given there from Kerstetter.
Yeah, I feel like Ed is just a little bit off of the pace of some of the guys that he's up here racing with right now. It could be setup, could be tire temp, just might be a little uncomfortable in the car being under pressure like they were, but Kerstetter going backwards there, but just an absolute slick move by Chris Sievert. Mentioned that earlier, Sievert's one of those guys where he always creeps into the picture at some point. Kerstetter, though, job not done, has still got Marek Levesque right behind him, and that's very important for Levesque because passing Kerstetter gets him one position closer to the lead in their class, and also gets him one position away from Cassis in the 95 for third place.
That's exactly right. Yeah, always looking for that little bit of an insurance policy from your other silver class drivers. And just in case you're wondering, in case it's not obvious, on the left side of your screen, you'll see drivers with a white background and a black number. They're in the pro class. When you have a white number and a gray or silver background, they're in the silver class. Just in case, I don't know if we touched on that yet so far. Looking here, now Sievert pulling away from Kerstetter. I will say, too, either Kerstetter's setup isn't like what he wants right now, or he just had an incredibly strong qualifying setup, and his race setup is maybe just a little bit more lacking. And sometimes you'll have that. It's not an exact science to prepare the setups for these races, and sometimes you just come into some, mine and gold there with your qualifying setup, and maybe your race setup is a little bit more bronze or lead.
Yeah, sometimes just how you are in traffic too is also really big. If your car is really good by itself, it may not be as good in a pack of race cars or right up next to somebody. It might be a good time trial setup or time trial car, but it might not be the best racing car. Might be a comfort factor to that as well. The race continuing here, and looking up and down through the field, I'm looking for cars that might be just a little bit out of place. The 72 of Oliveira, of course, looking slightly out of pace for their normal speed. And looking at, trying to find the Silver Championship leader, DeSantis, there he is, 14th place in the number 12 Porsche. They've got a little bit of work to do. Keep in mind, came in with only the one championship point lead.
Yeah, it's been really close in that Silver Championship. I mean, there's like 1 or 2 points separating so many drivers in the field from one to the next. So getting a huge haul of points on a day like today is going to be huge. And once we get out of here, more than half of the championship points for the season will have been paid out. Not to every single driver, but it gives you a good baseline of where you are, the halfway point in the overall championship season. So this is one of those races where after the day is done, you need to take a good kind of stock and look at yourself in the mirror to say, this is what my outlook has been. This is what it is currently, and I need, do you need to change that in the future? What do you need to change as you go forward? Kerstetter, though, he continues. He's been trucking along right now with Sievert. Sievert hasn't really started to pull away more than what he did over the last lap, and this tells me maybe that Kerstetter just needs that rabbit out in front of him to chase. Some drivers need that in order to be really at that 10/10ths of pace, and there's nothing wrong with that, but obviously you'd much rather be the guy that can go out there and lead who doesn't need that rabbit. And Sievert, again, one of those guys, he makes 100% moves. And when I say that, he doesn't do something flashy or make a big move and mess up. He's very reserved. And I really like how you put that as well, Jesse.
Yeah, to Kerstetter's record. I feel like, too, you mentioned a lot of drivers, they just need that carrot out in front of them. I think a lot of times drivers, they need that little bit of motivation and also just a visual representation, and that helps them, too. Oh, I'm getting beat into this corner. I'm getting, left off of this corner. I need to open my steering a little bit more. Things like that. You learn that when you're following cars. It's hard to do that when you're mirror driving to begin with, but you let that car get out in front. It frustrates the guy in front of you too. I will say for Sievert, it might frustrate them because what the heck, I passed them so easily, or it looked easy to us anyway, and now I can't leave him. What's going on? Kerstedter's found another gear. They found a little bit of a comfort, and again, could also be set up with that car as well. Fidel Moreira in third place, continuing their job here today, trying to race for an overall podium. Has some company behind him, though.
Yeah, looking here at Josh McKean in the 77 there, the Acura, it's basically right in the middle of the field, right? You mentioned about 38 cars here today. This is where you get in. These guys are most likely racing harder from one driver to the next, and it's crazy to think that, but I swear it's the truth. You get back here in the middle of the pack, these guys are racing tooth and nail for every single position, even if they're not making passes. It's so much more do or die back here than it is up in the front, where you have a lot more space from one driver to the next, and it's always crazy to think of, but until you get back there, just feeling that difference, it is a world of difference day and night.
Here is more information from race control. No further action for incident with the 4 and the 23, that back on lap number 2, and a 10-second time penalty to car 711 for aggressive driving on lap 3 versus car 19. So our first penalty of the day comes in the form of 10 seconds for 7-Eleven, further frustrating that driver and team. But no, it's absolutely like you say, the middle of the pack is, I've never met a driver ever say that it's easier to race in the pack than it is to lead. Everybody wants to be one of those front couple of cars. It is so hard to make up positions in the middle of this field. It puts an emphasis on how important qualifying is for a series like this that only runs hour races.
Yeah, you don't have a whole lot of time to improve your starting position if you qualify way back in the back of the pack, because maybe you missed your qualifying setup, you made a mistake in qualifying. You really do need to be on it for the entirety, and not just this hour-long race, but the qualifying session before this. And you need to make sure that you have a good setup too. The fastest setup might not always be the one that's easiest to race with other cars. It might be all trimmed out for the straightaways, but all of a sudden you get back here in the back of the pack and you've got guys able to take a higher apex speed through a corner than you and get a good run off the corner and really just tank your straightaway speed, or just a line that you can run around the racetrack. We'd see this countless times when Mercedes Formula One car like Valtteri Bottas would struggle so much at a place like Monza when he was only in like 7th position. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton is up there leading, and it's just because of the way you set up the car. You can have the fastest car in the field, but if you're back there in traffic, it becomes incredibly hard to pass.
Keep in mind, ACC, a simulator by every measure of the word. And of course, it measures air, draft, all that stuff, all that matters. You're in dirty air, it certainly can affect the race car. It's not affecting the race car, dirty air for your leader. 2 seconds out in front. And Austin, we touched on it a little bit ago. I think we should revisit it. Igor Rodriguez has been the hair out in front of the field this entire season. We briefly mentioned that at some point you get so far out there you can back off a little bit. He's got 2 seconds. How much further before he feels comfortable and he can back off just a little bit and keep the field behind him?
I'm not sure. It's different for every driver, but for him, he might just want to continue to put his foot down and really be on it lap after lap, because the best thing you can do as a racing driver is get into a groove. And the best way I can put that to somebody that maybe doesn't race cars all the time, especially competitively, is imagine yourself going on a long road trip and you're just driving down the highway. Eventually, you don't zone out and start to daydream. You just kind of go on autopilot where you're still driving safely. You can still steer the car in your lane and not need to worry about veering off the highway or into another lane and into another driver. But at some point, maybe 5 or 10 minutes later, you just kind of like have that realization that, whoa, I was just kind of like not thinking there for a quick second, how aren't I dead? And that's where he's going to find himself. And as soon as you break that, because all of a sudden you start lifting or taking it easy, you can start to make some mistakes. And I'm not going to say that Rodriguez is perfect, but he's shown himself to be perfect so far, and it's probably just because he's really good at getting himself into a groove. Quick replay here, Jesse.
Yeah, indeed. This is back in the pack around 30th place, I believe. Let's see what happens through this section of the racetrack. Everything normal here. Driving off the track. Oh, no, and he hits the curb in the 369. And how far away has he gone? Completely cutting that section of Maggots and Beckett's. Gets back on the racetrack, but we haven't seen that at all today. But, excuse me, that was 13th, not 30th place. But how many times have we seen cars go over those curbs and nothing happened? But that is exactly what can happen. You get it just a little bit wrong, a millimeter off, and the car starts bouncing like that, Austin. And there's absolutely no control. You have no steering. You can barely put gas or brake in it at that point because the Pirellis are coming up off of the floor. And good job not to loop that car. Drive it straight, get it through the grass, get it back on the track.
Yeah, he did an incredible job there to save that car. I was pretty surprised. I believe that was Barrera there, 13th place overall. I'm pretty sure he cut the entirety of Chapel Curve there. He did an amazing job. You know, he hit that bump, and you could tell he didn't mean to just arc it way off through the grass on the right of the track there, even through the gravel pit. Look at Kerstetter. He's fighting back. He's found that other gear like you talked about, Jesse.
That is absolutely incredible. Like I said, sometimes they just need somebody in front to give them just a little bit of reference. Has that happened here? Kerstetter has joined the fray again. They were 6/10 down. They've gained a lot of that time back. Sievert, of course, is not hanging around either. They've gained a bit of time as well, but look at this battle well and truly on, and all the way back to Merrick Levesque, who is back there in 8th place, still in the fight. But right now, Kerstetter back out in front of this group, and that's important. Kerstetter and Sievert, of course, racing each other for points.
Yeah, they certainly have as well. The pit window open right now. So basically, Jesse, if you're in a battle right now, an intense one, I would maybe say, like, if you're Lovering right now and you're in this 4-car battle, you're basically the last one in this little grouping of cars or something, I'd just go ahead and pit right now. See if you can undercut some guys. Great opportunity for that to happen. I will say as well, when Sievert got the lead of this little pack, they were about 4 or 5 seconds behind. Now that Kerstetter's back in front, they're about 6 seconds behind. So I don't know if maybe Kerstetter needed the rabbit in front of him, or if Sievert did, because I think they've only continued to lose time since Sievert took the lead of this little gaggle of cars.
Yeah, it certainly is what's going on there. Back to your point about when you pit advantageously, I think you're absolutely right. If you are in the back, now's a great time to get that stop taken care of. If you're the one in front of the group, the worst possible thing you could do is come into pit lane now, because that's going to release everybody behind you. I think you're at the back, though. You're absolutely spot on. I think you can come in. Lovering probably thinking about that right now, not wanting to get caught up, especially with Levesque in front of them, a position they have to gain but doesn't pay any points. It's risk management. Do you really want to risk it on the racetrack, or would you rather come into the pit lane and try to do it that way? The other thing about coming in and pitting right now is you may or may not have somebody spotting for you today or giving you information. If you don't, you're going to have to try and find a gap somewhere on the racetrack yourself that you're going to come out in clean air, because remember, coming in early only works if you finish your pit stop and you come out in clean air.
Yeah, I'm so glad you touched on that too. Took the words right out of my mouth. With how many cars we have right now out on track and the gaps between them, basically, you really, if you're in like that top maybe 6 or 7 of cars, I wouldn't do that, because you're going to come off pit road and you're going to be right in the middle of the pack. I would maybe wait until much later into this. And really all you need, if you can come out in clean air, is a lap or two to go out there and be at whatever pace you want. And more than likely, you might gain that couple tenths that you needed to pass the car, or maybe 2 cars in front of you. But right now, you know, if you're maybe 15th place on back, you've got a very, very good opportunity to bring yourself into the pits and come out in clean air behind the rest of the pack and just keep passing cars as they pull off the track. Alu Gobi is doing that right now. You can see her down on pit road as well. She continues to fall further through the field as everybody passes her out on track, but I like this strategy.
I do too. It's a little bit early for most people. I would suspect the bulk of drivers will come in right around the halfway point. They probably fueled for that. And of course, that's something we haven't talked about either. You can fuel this car however you think you need to. Some of these cars may have started out a little bit heavy on fuel, realizing that their strategy play was probably to go a little bit longer into the stint. Some may have taken more fuel simply so they have to take less in the pit lane. Some may have taken less fuel at the very beginning to make sure that they can come in early and try and do the undercut. Pass attempt here on the McLaren, and it hasn't gone well. Oh, and it was synchronized spinning until the second contact that spins the number 10 around. Now, that was for 31st place, and that was very pretty, not very advantageous to the tires, and then got very ugly there at the end. Contact.
Yeah, synchronized spinning there between those two cars. Looked almost poetic there, especially the car in the end. Spin somebody out and then they come back to spin you the rest of the way and clean you out, make you, go start facing the other direction. But yeah, basically, if I were any of these drivers, at worst case scenario, give yourself at least 30 minutes worth of fuel. That way you can pit in the exact middle of the hour-long race. But best case scenario, ideally, I'd rather have about 35 minutes of fuel in the car. That way I can take advantage of anything I see out on track. If you're the lead car like Rodriguez is, if you only put 20 minutes of fuel in the car, that's great. But at some point, you're going to come out into this, like chuck middle of the field in traffic, and sometimes accidents can happen. Maybe somebody makes a mistake in front of you. They're in 12th place having a good day until you come into play, start to pass, and they make a mistake, take you out. Now your chance of winning the race completely gone. So you need to make sure that whilst you have these ideas, like you mentioned, Jesse, plan before you start the race, that you don't, close any doors, so to speak, to make sure that you screw yourself into a bad outcome.
No, and right you are. That's why so many people come in at the halfway point, simply because it's the best of both worlds. You do not have to short fill the car. You do not run too heavy. You take a minimum amount of fuel on pit lane if you come into the middle. It all makes sense. Other drivers, though, they do like to roll the dice. We saw Leandro Worley on pit lane. That's their scheduled stop being taken care of. And for those of you that are wondering about the pit window, they have 14 and a half minutes thereabout to come down pit lane. They don't have to complete their stop in that time. They merely have to be at the pit end timing line before that pit window closes in 14 and a half minutes. We have seen drivers, the reason I point this out, we have seen drivers time it to the second before. It is a very dangerous strategy. It can be very advantageous if you're set up to do that, though, and it has worked out for some in the field. It's backfired as well. You get a nice fat penalty if you do not pit within the window.
Yeah, really, you can only blame yourself at that, too. I mean, you've got 20 minutes in the middle of the race to pit. They give you more than enough opportunities to do that. I understand it's easy to kind of get caught up in the middle of the race, and sometimes you might not have a crew chief maybe on top of the pit box or on pit wall kind of calling your strategy for you. But, these are things you need to make sure you keep your eye on. And Jesse, it's really apparent to me right now, but we've got a lot more cloud cover than we had before.
Oh,
this
dear.
tells me a couple things. Rain is, if it's not coming, it's here already. It just hasn't started to fall. And secondly, track temperature is going to start to plummet. And these guys are going to have to make sure that they're on it in terms of trying to keep up with the changes in track temperature to make sure that they keep up with the changes in tire pressure. Obviously, PV equals MRT, linearly related pressure and temperature. You can't have one without having the other. And if you start losing temperature in one area, you need to increase the pressure to raise the temperature in another to kind of make sure you keep that symbiotic balance.
The good news is, from the weather station, Michael Hamlet says that it does appear to be dry. No weather on the horizon or the radar for the next 30 minutes. So even if it were to rain at this point in the final 2 or 3 minutes, it would be only the final couple of minutes. And you would suspect at that point everybody would try to just sort of survive and bear it at that point. But the cloud cover is significant, Austin, like you say, because remember, folks, this race started beautiful sunshine, 32 degrees C on the racetrack. It's certainly less than that now. I would argue considerably less than that now. The track is very volatile to changes, and that will change what your tire pressure's at. And these tire pressures in ACC, for what these tires want, are quite particular. You need to hit a specific value or range, otherwise you are going to be giving up a ton of time, as Fidel Moreira brings the Williams Esports Porsche into pit lane.
Yeah, he's going to give up the 5th position. You can see his overall position plummet there as he continues to sit on pit road. Another information here from race control: the incident between car 10 and 36 on lap 11, a 10-second time penalty given out to the 10 car for causing a collision.
Certainly is. That's Yamamoto with the 10-second penalty. We saw the replay earlier on, just sort of dove down in there and ended up getting themselves collected, is actually what happened there. They're the only ones that truly spun around, but do the crime, do the time. As they say, Yamamoto, 10-second penalty further frustrating them. Several of the cars here, all the cars here that have a green placard have done their mandatory pit stop for the day. And Worley, one of the first cars into pit lane, absolutely in the thick of it, racing Clifford in the 999 Lamborghini up in front. Again, this is for position in the silver class.
Yeah, Leandro's doing a good job to make sure he just kind of tails Clifford right here so that he's close enough to take advantage, but not too close to miss some of his marks on track. And there's a fine line in doing that, too, where sometimes if the car ahead of you might be taking the apex, you can't all of a sudden see where you're going. And if they're too far out in front of you, even if they do make a mistake, you're not close enough to capitalize. He's sitting right there. I'm going to call it the catbird seat for right now, but he's got to be careful, too. He's got another car just behind him. It's Alu Gobi, another car that had that early pit stop. Liked the strategy there out of that 20 car. Another pro car in a sea of silver.
Huge problems for second place in the silver championship. Hamza Gulzar has got themselves a stop and go 30. That usually only means one thing: that's speeding in the pit lane. They have done their mandatory stop, but at the cost of an additional stop and go 30. They have 3 laps to serve that. That is not what Gulzar wanted to see fighting for this championship.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you really need to make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's, mind your P's and Q's. Make sure you're doing just the bare minimum of what you need to do, checking all the boxes here. One of those boxes is not speeding on pit road. If this were a 24-hour race, you'd still be kicking yourself, but at least you have a lot more time to make it up. With this hour, you really need to be on it the entire time in order to have a good result, and that's not what you need in an hour-long race, is speeding on pit road. That's one of those simple mistakes. It's so easy to make, but at this level, it's really something you should avoid.
Yeah, a lot of times people assume that speeding in the pit lane is just trying too hard, trying to get to pit lane as hard as possible. More often than not, though, it's a misclick or a not registered input to select the pit limiter. And even when it's not that, it's usually still just an error, like being in the wrong gear. Most of these cars, if not all of these cars now, only go into the pit limiter in first gear. So if you come in, you're coming down through the gears. It is a fast entry to pit lane here, and you don't click down to first gear and you hit the limiter and you get back on the throttle, you're going to speed in pit lane. You're going to get that penalty. I would hazard the guess that one of the two of those happened. I don't really believe, unless it was a complete wipeout into pit lane. Now, we have seen that before, too. A car crashing, getting onto pit lane, trying too hard, and getting themselves a penalty as insult to injury, but I would argue it's probably one of the first two.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Let's talk about that, too, just for a quick second, in case anybody isn't familiar. These cars have a pit road speed limiter. In most cases, that's just a button you hit on your racing wheel. However, as just maybe sort of a catch-all, like a fail-safe or idiot-proof way to make sure that happens, where you don't do it going down the Mulsanne Straight at about a buck 87 mile an hour, it only makes the car go pit road speed limit if they're in first gear, sort of as a fail-safe. So if you come down pit road, you're in second gear and you click that button, you put your foot to the throttle. That's what you do when you're on pit road. You have the pit road speed limiter. You mat your foot to make sure you get everything out of that pit road speed limiter. If you're in second gear, the car no longer holds you to that pit road speed limit. You just start to accelerate it. It's just one of those simple things that you'll have where, like, oh shoot, I was not in first gear, I was in second gear. And even if it's 1 mile an hour, 5 miles an hour, even in kilometers per hour, anything over that, bare maximum of pit road speed limit, that's still a stop-go 30. Doesn't matter what it is.
Most of the cars have been down pit lane right around the halfway point, which is sort of where we predicted they would do, simply because that is the standard of not trying to get too much out of it, not trying to get too cute with it on pit lane as well. They've all done that task pretty well. Where they shake out right now, well, we have Sherritt leading Sievert, leading Levesque right now. That was the group that we were watching just a little bit ago. Right now we're watching Barrera in the 369. Remember, a few laps ago, Austin, this car took a wild ride through Maggots, Beckett's, and Chapel.
Yeah, only lost 4 positions so far. We'll continue to see how things shake out. I believe everybody has gone through the pits. I will say, though, Kerstetter there. Ed Kerstetter,
oh, no.
Porsche, another stop-go 30, and that would, I agree, probably another case of speeding on pit road. So easy to do, but just one of those things you need to start avoiding. But yeah, back to Barrera here, up to 14th position. He only lost like 1 spot from all that craziness there of completely cutting Beckett's there and coming out right at Chapel Curve. So he did a great job again to save that car and not turn a mistake into something a lot worse. That could have been way uglier than what it was.
Timothy Flamger in the 19 Porsche has a drive-through penalty. Now, I'm quite curious. That could go either way, but I'm forced to believe at this time that is track limits. That's the only thing that we haven't touched on. We touched on speeding in the pit lane. We touched on penalties of that nature. We've seen penalties issued by race control. Timothy Flamger, I believe, has been the first one to get a drive-through for track limits. You get 3 track limit warnings. That means that you drive over the bounds of the racetrack and, generally speaking, gain an advantage doing so. On the 4th time of doing it, you get a drive-through penalty, which you also have to serve within 3 laps.
Yeah, and that basically, to put it in the simplest terms, drive through pit road at pit road speed. It's probably going to be about like a 30-second time penalty overall for that driver, and I don't mean stopping and going, just basically 30 seconds of just basically dropping through the field like a rock. And again, one of those things where at this level it's so easy to do because you're pushing yourself, and Silverstone is one of those places as well. High commitment to these corners, but if you just go a little bit too fast in one of these, when you swing out from a left turn to a right turn, maybe you just barely cut the corner, cut the apex on one of those, and like you said, you know, it's kind of like 3 strikes, and you need to start watching yourself. That 4th one in race control says, that's it. You got the no-no squares this time.
Pit stop cycle complete. No change out front, but Negrini has been caught by Moreira for the 2nd time today. That gap widened quite a bit prior to those pit stops. Moreira is back, though, in the 41 Porsche and has taken the fight to Negrini.
Yeah, Moreira's looking really aggressive right now. I like his lines and how he's cutting the car through some of these corners. It really looks like that car is on rails right now, and I'm not sure. Oh, quick replay here. Let's take a look at that. Then we'll come back to this battle.
This is the 88. No contact yet there. Is there going to be contact here in the tight right-hander? Hits the curb just a little bit. Yep, Porsche with a little bit of contact in the switchback. Nothing too terrible there through that section, but just a little bit of careless argy-bargy, but beyond that, just a nice move.
You know, it's somewhat careless, but it's also one of those situations where if a driver knows exactly where all 4 corners of their car are, they can just make some phenomenal moves and just weave that thing around, man. It's like threading a camel through the eye of a needle. It's not easy, but some guys can do it extremely well, and that was a masterclass right there of just having heads-up awareness, driving, of knowing where everything around you is, and just having that 6th sense of what's going on. Looking here at Hutchinson, he's got Sherritt just behind him, and really not a whole lot to lose for him right now. He still wants to do his best to catch up to Moreira and Negrini. Still, there's a podium in sight for him. It is a decent ways up the track, but if Sherritt gives him too much pressure, just let him by, pull over for him. You're not really racing Sherritt for position, just maybe sort of a position on the track. So if he pressures you too much, just let him by.
Well, the problem for Marek Levesque right now is, yes, there's only the one car in between him and the leader in the silver class, Sherritt. The problem is that it's one car and a massive gap, 11.3 seconds, and Levesque again having bigger issues. They've still got Cassis behind them. and they're very much on their tail. And Patrick as well has joined this fray post pit stops in the 59 Porsche. It's a three-way fight for P2. All of those cars in a line together. If I'm Cody Sherritt, I don't know if Cody will be aware of what's going on behind him, some 10, 11 seconds behind them. But if I was his engineer or crew chief or spotter, whomever he has, if he has one, I'd be saying, look, they're in a massive fight. They're no threat to you. Do not do anything crazy racing Jade Hutchinson right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's two sides to that tale, right? Maybe he's really good in the corners, or he's bad in the corners, and he's good or bad down the straightaways. Just keep doing whatever you've done to get yourself in that position, but realize that you're not racing against the clock. There's really nothing on the line with having to pass Hutchinson. You might want to. Hutchinson doesn't really need to race you. You don't need to race him unless he's holding you up massively. You've got 11 seconds to lose before you even start to get challenged by some of these guys behind. And you have to keep in mind, Jesse, it's not just to catch a car. It's one thing to catch a car. It's another thing to pass a car. So you still got some options left, even if you do somehow manage to lose 11 and a half seconds. That's the gap from Chris Sievert up there to Sherritt. That's a long ways around this track.
Sure is. And losing 11 and a half seconds with this group, the pros, the best of the best, that is a long old time. That's about 11 seconds to these guys is like a lap for most of us. That's how big of a gap that really is. If you want to put it into realistic terms, it is forever. Chris Sievert is in an unenviable position. He's the first car in the pro class that's in between a couple of these silver cars. And if I am Sievert, I've got to play this a little cautiously, knowing that I have everything to lose versus all of these silver drivers right now. And if they get a little bit racy, maybe just duck out of that just a little bit. Already in the top 5, going to get decent points, just can't get involved in a battle that doesn't pertain to you.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. At this point in the season, you need to start thinking the stuff as big picture. And Sievert is in an enviable position for most of the drivers because he's the last one not in the top 3 on points. He's 4th in the points for the pro drivers. That's a great spot to be, right? Unenviable in the race, but doing really well in the championship season-long standings. So he's really got just as much points left to get as he's already gotten so far. So losing, a position on track overall to some of these silver class guys really isn't the end of the world. And again, Alivardo's got 2 seconds up to Patrick. So even if Sievert wants to go from the front of the silver gaggle of cars to the back of it, he's still got 2 seconds left before he's even challenged to lose that 5th position overall in the pro class.
Skylar Loverink did not have one of the quickest pit stops that we've ever seen. Remember, this car was up inside the top 10, now outside of the overall top 10, trying to fight their way back. The car shows pace. They're behind DeSantis and have gained on DeSantis a little bit. Speaking of DeSantis, they have somewhat recovered a little bit in their silver class championship bid. And on top of that, I was thinking about the points championship in the back of my head. I'm not smart enough to do the math that quickly, Austin, as you well know. But one thing I do know is Igor de Oliveira Rodriguez is absolutely running away with the pro champ. You know that. But what I was suspecting is actually come true. I was wondering how close to a tie we were in the silver class for the top positions. As they run right now, folks, it is a dead tie between Merrick Levesque and Cody Sherritt for the silver championship lead. 66 points apiece as they run.
Yeah, but how about Nick DeSantis, too? He's only 5 points behind both of them as they run for the minute. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool that there's a tie between the two drivers, 3 races in as they run. But Nick DeSantis is not ready to give up this lead. You talked about him kind of recovering. Sometimes with a championship-long season drive, it's not about maximizing the good days. It's about minimizing the bad ones. And you might say it's not a great day for him if he's in 5th position overall in the silver class, but he's just plugging away, man. Silverstone might not be one of his best tracks, and he's just happy to get along with it. But I tell you what, though, Pit Stop UK, that's where we are, right? That's where Silverstone is. This is kind of the home race for that team. So, yeah, I'm sure he's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders.
I wonder, he's probably not thinking about the points championship right now. What he's probably thinking about is, how do I get up there? How do I fight Patrick, Cassis, and Levesque? Because keep in mind, only about 2.5, maybe 3 seconds back. I feel like that's doable, especially if they are coming through the field a little bit. They have fallen off the back of, actually, no, they passed Loverink is what they've done, and they've got closer to Alvarado now. I don't think it's out of the question that they maybe could get fourth place. And keep in mind, DeSantis gets fourth place. He's going to have 65 points. He'll only be about 1 point behind the top two in the championship going into the final 2 rounds. That would just about knot it all up for the top 3.
Certainly would, as we continue to ride on board here with Moreira. It continues to just kind of stalk right now Negrini as they continue to go along here. Moreira, I'm not going to say he's been sloppy, but his line certainly hasn't been as good as I think it needs to be to go up there and be faster than Negrini. And this is at one of those points too where if I see a driver behind someone else for this long, it's not a question of if they're faster, it's how much faster is Moreira than Negrini, because he's been holding them up. I mean, to be behind somebody for this long and still on their tail and pressuring them, it tells me 2 things. A, Negrini's got an iron gut. Like, he doesn't care. He's just happy to drive his race. But B, Moreira has a lot more pace in his car than Negrini, I think.
I tend to agree with that. I want to touch on a point that you mentioned just a moment ago about sloppy lines. I have been peeking out of the window a little bit, looking at some of the lines on the racetrack that the drivers are taking. They're using every inch of the racing surface as is required for this level of motorsport. Ooh, a little bit of contact there, a lockup getting into the loop section of the racetrack. Dornelis just able to avoid anything bigger on Elu Gobi, and now they fan out down the straight, all fighting for position. A huge nod for Dornelis down the straight as they get into the corner, and they're going to be able to hold station. Still trying to find a way by Gobi. McKean trying to find their way around both of them. Excellent racing here. You've got to try everything. You've got to block the move. You've got to set yourself up to make the positions yourself. You're doing everything whenever you're the hot dog in the bun.
Yeah, this is the most frustrating thing that could have possibly happened for Renato here, because he tried to make a move on Gobi, and as soon as he did that, he poked out a line. The respect really wasn't given or taken there from Gobi, so he lost a little bit of time, and as soon as he did that, McKean was all over him, and that's the most frustrating thing, is just to be challenged by the guy behind, like, look, man, I'm faster than the car ahead of me. You might think you're faster than me too, but if we just work together, just let me have this chance to go past this guy first, or girl in this situation, you can get past him too, and then we can pull away, maybe duke it out a little bit later. But McKean's got the same problem going on. He says, hey, you've had many opportunities to pass Gobi. I want my shot to do it. So it's the most frustrating thing when you poke your nose out of line to have a bad corner, and then all of a sudden the guy behind you starts chomping at the bit, makes it too wide into a corner.
There's an old saying in American short track racing, or American racing in general. It's called co-opetition. It's cooperative competition, and that's exactly what Dornelis is trying to get McKean to understand. Look, I'm going to go up there. I'm going to try and pass Alou. I'm going to maybe leave the door open for you. You just need to be patient. Work with me. You don't have to work with me. Just don't work against me. Going back here just a little bit ago, going to take a look at this move made by the 88 Ferrari up the inside, as clean as you like through Village. Now that was beautiful.
That was textbook right there. That is everything you want to see from one driver to another. That was, hey, I think I'm faster. I'm going to outbrake you into this corner. And Sievert saw that. He says, all right, you take the lead, have the position for right now. And of course, Sievert's made that move himself a couple times. He knows what it's like. Respect given, respect taken. Good to have that sort of ebb and flow on track. And again, Sievert's in that position where that was a silver driver passing him. Oh, the greenie. Big wiggle there, off the track, doesn't lose too much time, but that's got to be aggravating.
You called it, partner, earlier. Negrini's lines just did not look as crisp as Moreira in front, or excuse me, it was the other way around, I've just realized, and now Negrini back into third place, Moreira P2, and is the Acetec SimSport Visceral number 2 Audi. Is that car fading a little bit here?
I think it is. I'd be curious to see what happened just before as we were looking at some of the other battles. What was going on in that one? Was it Moreira going through, forced Negrini to take a little bit of a bad line through there, compromised line entrance or exit to one of the corners, maybe pushed him too wide, and that's what forced him off. And we just got to that angle a little bit late to see that battle, but I've kind of got to go with you on this one, Jesse. I think Negrini started to fall off here.
Herrera put the pressure on too. I think you might be right. Just putting the pressure on, just living in that rear view mirror a lot of times. Eventually a driver will crack, they'll get caught mirror driving, make a little bit of a mistake, and miss the corner. Let's take a look and see exactly what happened between these two. Very close racing between the two of them. Negrini goes down into the corner. Everything looks normal here. Around the outside, though, the Porsche completely off of the racetrack. Near contact, maybe wheel-to-wheel contact there, but where does the going wide happen? There, a little bit of a slip. So that was the pass, but not the moment they went wide. Tries to come back down the inside. Does Negrini, unable to do so, but then he gets back to these inside again. He's there, fully alongside. Definite contact between the 41 and the 2, and I assume there's additional contact still.
Yeah, this is right where we're going to see that Audi there kind of go off track. It's going to be right about here. He takes the cut, and I think we'll see him go off track in just a second. Right here, he makes some sort of mistake. Oh, yeah, he just went wide.
Yeah.
Just had a big bobble there, caught the car. And luckily for him, he didn't go straight into the fence. He was able to keep it out of there. But, yeah, so that pass was clean. That was an amazing move there by Herrera.
Wheel-to-wheel racing, in my opinion. Nothing really odd about that. It just you're racing for the big part of the pie here, quite frankly. And everybody knows it. You're getting late into the race. Your patience is running just a little bit thin. You've got to take every run and every move afforded to you. I think that's exactly what that was, and that was about as good as that outcome was going to be. That driving off the track, that was completely on Negrini, just too much on the curb, got onto the back side of it, unsettled the car as he attempted to hop to the right side of the curb again, had to catch the race car, and unfortunately took him off the racetrack. I will say, Austin, I am starting to worry just a little bit. A bunch of these cars driving off the racetrack, trying to gain a little bit of an advantage. We've already seen one car with a drive-through today. I worry with 10 and a half left if we may see a few more of those pop up. I hope not, but I worry it might happen.
No, for sure. I've kind of had that in the back of my mind as well, just seeing how many cars, when you race side by side with somebody else, how many of these guys are just trying to go that extra, I'm not going to say mile, maybe an inch, half an inch, even just a couple of millimeters is the difference between getting an off track. And once you get enough of those, it only takes 4 before you get that drive-through penalty. And that's like a 30-second drop-off. Just basically, take yourself out of line, put yourself back in after losing 30 seconds or something ridiculous like that. It's just, you really can't have it here. It is so easy because you've got so many right-left corner complexes across this entire track. And it's very easy that if you have the inside for one corner, you need to make sure that you clear the guy, because if you have the outside on the next one, and you just barely take too much speed to the apex of the corner, you're going to push wide, and you might find yourself with getting it off track. Looking here at Patrick there in the Sim Racing Alliance number 59 car, the silver Porsche in the silver category, all over here, the back end of Febres Casas here, Porsche on Porsche action. This is for the 8th overall position and 3rd in class.
That battle has sort of worked its way through, hasn't it? DeSantis hasn't been able to gain too much on Alvarado in front. Keep in mind, DeSantis has to get by Alvarado to take the fight to Casas and Patrick. That really hasn't happened, and at this point with 9 minutes to go and a nearly 3-second gap, it will prove to be a gap just a little bit too far. These two cars, of course, still racing each other quite heavily, Casas and Patrick, as Chris Sievert is fading just a little bit for STR, aren't they? They were up inside the top 5 overall. They've given up spots to Sherritt. They've given up a spot to Marek Levesque now, and just waiting to see that checkered flag here at 8.5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, again, though, we touched on this before, Jesse. He's still got 2 more silver drivers to let by until he's then all of a sudden under pressure by Alvarado. But Alvarado is still just as far back as he was before from Patrick. So Sievert's still got 2 seconds to play with, even if he lets by the 2 Porsches behind him in the 95 and the 59. But ever since Levesque got around him, it looks like they've been pulling away lap over lap compared to the 2 Porsches behind. So they're kind of taking themselves from one big 4-car island to now 2 different 2-car islands. So I think right now Levesque passing Sievert's the best thing that could have happened to him.
Certainly the case. Cody Sherritt didn't want to see that, though, admittedly, after having a gap all race. And even though it's still a 14.5 to 15-second gap, first to second in the silver class, it does something to you psychologically knowing that they're right there. And even if Sherritt is still gaining, it was 15 seconds the last time the gap, it's 15.3 now. That still does something to you. Okay, I do not have a buffer anymore. I've got to keep my wits about me. I've got to be perfect, and certainly don't want to be running over track limits at this stage. By the way, the fight for P2 is still not over. Moreira may have got around Negrini with a brilliant move. Negrini's still there.
Yeah, I think Negrini's done a good job kind of just collect himself and take a deep breath, cool off his tires to try and see if he can go back at Moreira. But I will say, too, though, for Sherritt, I mean, I would say he's not out of the woods yet because there's still, like, just under 7 minutes of racing left here. But 15 seconds is, I mean, that's an astronomical gap in racing, especially after a little bit less than an hour. So it's one of those situations where if I'm Sherritt right now, I say, like, oh, dang it, I lost my insurance policy of that one pro class car between us. But 15 seconds is one of those things where if I mess up and do something that bad or that out of line, I really didn't deserve to have that insurance policy, that extra car between us, because if you make a 15-second or more mistake, you kind of deserve to lose the spot too. So just make sure you mind your P's and Q's, and just, you don't need to set the world ablaze. Rodriguez has got the fastest lap by likely a large amount, and your tires at this point are pretty old. There might be a little bit less fuel in the car than before, but you don't need to go out there and put down some purple sectors.
You certainly don't. Campano Patrick continuing to fight hard for third place in that silver class, has Fimbres Casas directly in front of them. It's pretty equal between the two of them, two Porsches running very similar lap times. Patrick just got to find a way to make this work. And when a podium is that close, fourth place is a fine enough position, but when you have that opportunity directly in front of you, certainly Patrick might feel like they have a little bit better car right now. They've got 5 minutes left to figure out how to get up there next to them, make something happen like so many other cars have done inside the top 10 today. And it's all come undone for your championship leader coming into the day. DeSantis has received a drive-through penalty. Austin, we worried about how many more of these we might see based on the liberal use of the track today, and it's gone wrong for your championship leader in silver.
Yeah, that's absolutely devastating there for DeSantis. I mean, it was only a 1-point lead coming into today, but he was still at least in striking distance of a championship there for the next two races if they finished how they were running. But this is going to drop him, I'm going to say, definitely outside of the top 20, might be outside of the top 25. We'll have to see just where he comes out after this, but this is... Man, you hate to see that for him. I mean, he was still competitive, right? He wasn't sort of what we'd seen all season long out of him, but he was still kind of right there, as you continue to see there. Dornell fighting with Gobi, and of course McKean is right there with him. McKean looking to take his position as well around the outside.
McKean trying to go around the outside, down the pit straight. They're going to be side by side, getting into the corner. Contact! Ooh. And that's going to send one of the cars around, and that's not what you wanted to see. McKean getting the car refired and getting back into the fray. That Acura was trying to make the move around the outside. How many times in motorsport have we seen that around the outside move not come off? And it certainly didn't there either.
Nah, too many times, and it looked like he was going to be clear. I think Josh would have had it there, but I think that was Dornellis just sticking his own nose in there for a little too long, and he tried to back out of it. He tried to make sure to give McKean all the room that he needed there, kind of conceded the position, but I think he just came down to the apex a little bit faster than Dornellis was thinking would happen, and just... That's what happens, racing incident, in my opinion. We'll see what race control says. We look back at this battle. This is for the 4th and 5th position.
My comment on that, Abby claims another one. Jade Hutchinson, one of the cars that we haven't talked a whole lot about, the Automobili Lamborghini team, and the 26 doing a good job. Let's go back to the replay, show you this again, perhaps from a different angle, side by side. McKean around the outside, maybe just comes in a little bit early, wouldn't you say, Austin? And just gets spun. I know a lot of people at home are looking at, well, of course it's the car on the inside's fault, right? Like, I don't know. I think if you're committed to the outside like that, you've got to give just a little bit more room than that.
Yeah, well, I think too, Abbey is one of those corners where some drivers like to turn in a little bit early to help prepare themselves for farm curve, and some guys like to turn in a little bit later to really maximize their straightaway speed to get a sort of a different angle into farm. So I think it's one of those where you'll have a difference of opinion and racing line when it comes down to it, and I think that's what happened there. I do think, though, that McKean definitely turned in earlier than Darnell's wanted or thought would happen, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, Abbey claims another one. That was perfect.
Yeah, certainly the case here. Lovereek in the 520 for Bricks Racing, continuing their fight through the field. 12th place. They've been stuck here ever since the pit stop sequence completed. Was in the top 10 prior to that, trying to get some of that back. We'll get DeSantis by default. Now, interesting about DeSantis's penalty here, you get 3 laps to serve that. There was less than 5 minutes left in the race. He might be able to come to the line and serve that as a 30-second post-race penalty. He might not actually have to come back to the pit lane. Here's some more contact here. The 23 getting it wrong and getting spun.
Yeah, he took way too much curb there to the center. I think that was in between Maggots and Beckett's, and just having to check up because he hit the curbs all wrong and just got pounded there by the car behind. Nothing either driver could have done there. I mean, Staffen obviously made the mistake to begin with, but I couldn't quite get a good enough look at who was behind that made the contact, but that was not the fault of the following driver at all.
No, just so close through there. You don't have time to react. It's exactly what you're saying. Whenever you're coming through there, you're hauling the mail, and you do not have time to react to anybody. If they have a little incident like that, there's nothing you can do. Your car is set in the direction that it's going, and even if you got to the brake quick enough, you wouldn't have time. The closing speed's going to be too great because the car in front of you is decelerating way quicker than you ever could. And Josh Staffen just got sent for one. Like you said, though, I don't think it was anybody's particular fault. Last lap of the race, and what can you say about a man who's done everything right this season? Igor Rodriguez has dominated this championship. He's looking to make it a perfect 3 for 3. Can you believe it? Nobody in SRO history has ever dominated quite the way that Igor Rodriguez has dominated this championship.
Now, the man's putting on a clinic. I mean, it's almost like he's playing a video game with a controller and he's got the AI set to easy mode. I mean, he's just walking away with it. 10 seconds over the closest driver, almost 10, I should say, over Moreira. I mean, Igor Rodriguez is just putting on a show. I mean, putting these guys to shame almost. And just, he's been on it, man. It's been incredible to watch.
Rodriguez has won races at Laguna Seca and Circuit of the Americas this season, one of which was quite close. He had to actually dig a little bit harder than he has done today. But rather besides, every time we talk to a very confident driver, very smart driver, knows what he needs out of the race car, knows what he needs to do on the racetrack, and has not put a foot wrong. It's just impossible to keep up with somebody who refuses to lose and refuses to make mistakes. And while we focus on what we assume to be, as long as they come to the line, a 3-time winner this season, keep in mind there's battles all throughout this pack still, including this one between Johnson Harder and Portis II.
Yeah, these guys are racing, and just because the white flag comes out, that doesn't mean that you just kind of foul the guy ahead of you until the checkered flag. That means you've got one more lap of chances to go ahead and see if you can get that extra position here. Harder continues to chase down Johnson, the car ahead. Porsche on Porsche battle, and watch out for Portis there and that Acura behind both those cars. If either one of them makes a mistake, a slip up, he's going to be there to take advantage and pick up the scraps.
Harder definitely pulled out there, was trying to see what Johnson would do. Johnson able to not have to worry about that too much, but here he is. He's going to make it 3 in a row. Igor Rodriguez is going to win it for Williams Esports Team Racer in the 123, and it's a 3-peat for Rodriguez.
Absolute clinic here today, and here's Moreira. Williams 1 and 2 for Williams Esports here. The 41 machine, he comes home second spot on the podium, and of course Cody Sherritt's going to win in silver.
Cody Sherritt comes across the line. It was an easy day after all for him. Qualified on pole, got it done, and it's a win for Cody Sherritt. And this is going to shake up the Silver Championship like you wouldn't believe. Merrick Levesque comes home P2. Certainly unaware of what that's done to the points, but it's just about knotted it up front.
Another look at this three-wide battle here for 24th position overall. Race control, one last little tidbit here for now. The incident between cars 77 and 3. Oh, that pumped away a little bit too quick there.
I believe that was no further action for that one, as Harder, and indeed, racing incident between the 77 and the 3 on lap 28. No harm, no foul. Hayden Harder here might get pipped at the line, and that was very close there between all of those drivers. 68 1/100ths of a second at the line. Sometimes it's just that close.
Man, and how about Kerstetter here? He was upside in the up in the top 10 for a while, and after that drive, the big penalty he got, 32nd position here as they fight through the last couple corners there through Club onto the front straightaway.
Going to be a close one. Kerstetter, though, unable to make that position. Cloutier able to withstand and hold on. What a race. Right down to the end. Many positions inside the top 5, and rather besides as well. All came within hundredths of a second, not tenths, hundredths of a second at the line. That's as close as we like it, Austin.
Yeah, this race had everything. I really enjoyed that we had a couple different strategies there with some cars pitting early, some cars pitting later. I was surprised that we didn't see any really late takers onto pit road like we've seen in some of the past races here in the SRO Esports, but it's always one of those situations where sometimes there's clearly a better strategy, and today it was basically make sure you've gone into the pits and come out by that 45th minute in the race there. So a little bit surprised by that, but I'm not at all surprised by how close the racing was all the way up and down the field, with one exception, but not really. Rodriguez pulled away from the field. I mean, 10 seconds. That is a butt whooping like you wouldn't believe.
He's done that before in this championship, and he's marching his way to a championship. Made a comment earlier on I want to expand upon ever so slightly. I said nobody's ever dominated the SRO Esports world quite the way that Igor Rodriguez is doing. Of course, I'm talking specifically about the Pro Series. Dominic Blyer won 4 out of the 5 races in the European Championship silver fight last year, of course, but it's just an absolute onslaught. I can't wait to ask him when we get him in for the driver interviews just what's going through his head right now. Imagine showing up to the racetrack and everything you do turns to gold.
It's hard to imagine for me. I mean, it's a situation I've been in certain leagues, but not to the caliber of this, right? That's why these guys are here. But Rodriguez, man, I mean, just to come out here and absolutely, it's like he's a chicken laying golden eggs. I mean, just very coveted, and I think we're going to continue to see a lot more domination out of Rodriguez, not just here, but everywhere. A bright future. I mean, he's just a masterclass to watch.
Right you are, partner. And you know what? All credit to Fidel Moreira trying to keep pace, trying to do everything that they possibly can do to keep it as close as possible, keeping them honest, as we would say here in the States, certainly doing that. Well, here it is, folks. This is the dynamic picture of the race, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. That one's worth $1,000. That is a brilliant photo of the battle for P2. And it was just that close. Silverstone provides excellent shot by Dynamic. Thank them for their partnership.
I'm always amazed what kind of magic they can produce out of a race this close. And of course, ACC just continues to impress with the graphics.
Well, we have him here, the winner in the pro class, 3rd time on the trot, perfect this season. Igor Rodriguez, what is going through your mind right now as a 3-time winner?
I'm super happy. Like, practice has been going well. Luckily, the car has been good all season long, and the best I could hope for was a dry race, and it happened. So, yeah, really happy.
You've won 3 in a row, Igor. To my knowledge, nobody's ever done that in the pro class. It's just like you show up to the track, you're on another level. Is some of that luck of the draw, or is that just how hard you're practicing for this series?
I've been practicing a lot. I've been only driving Audi pretty much this season, like even for enduros and everything. So I'm pretty like happy with the car and the setup. So I think like I've been doing really well on practice.
I would absolutely agree. I mean, every week you come out, you set on pole, you set the pace in these races. I mean, at some point, I hate to jinx it, but I'm going to ask, can you go 5 for 5?
I will try it. Like I think it's as long as it doesn't rain. If it's all dry races, I maybe can do it.
What do you think about your chances in the Audi for Williams in 2 weeks' time at Watkins Glen?
I think it's pretty good. And for me, it will be like pretty much the same as Silverstone. Like, if it doesn't rain, I think I can get like podium pretty much. And yeah, I think the car has great pace there.
Well, I talked to him a month or so ago, and he was pretty happy about coming to Silverstone in the Audi if it stayed dry. I've got the same response here. I think we all know what Igor wants to see. Igor, before you go, anybody you want to thank?
I really want to thank all my teammates, my engineer, Dan, helped me a lot this race, Williams, and all the sponsors.
Thank you very much, Igor Rodriguez. Ladies and gentlemen, folks at home, your winner in the pro class for the 3rd time this season.
Thank you.
Austin, thank you. Austin, what do you take away from an interview like that? The man's confident, and why wouldn't you be?
Exactly. Great question. Why wouldn't you be that confident just after coming out here and dominating today? And I'm interested to hear. I'd like to maybe get more words of him after of why he wants the race to stay dry. And my only idea was that if the rain comes at a certain point, it might kind of put him in a weird position where he has to complete maybe another lap compared to everybody else on slick tires when he'd really like to come down and change it. But Jesse, I believe we've got another person up here in the interview booth.
Certainly do. Another happy driver. Cody Sherritt needed a race to get himself back into championship contention, and boy, did he. Cody, tell us about your day.
Yeah, I think overall it was a good race. I honestly think I had a lot more pace in me. I seemed to struggle quite a bit when I got close to someone with the rear losing itself, and so I just tried to maintain a gap behind and keep it clean till the end. And so yeah.
Cody, what if I told you went from 6th in the championship points to tied for the lead? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. There's still 2 more rounds to go. Anything can happen. So it's just the best man win.
How do you feel about your chances going to Watkins Glen in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I feel Watkins Glen is one of my good tracks. So I think I can naturally get into groove a lot easier. So I think I've got a good chance of doing well there.
We had Igor in here, and they were worried about the threat of weather maybe at Watkins Glen or even beyond that in the finale. Are you worried about that at all?
Not really. I think the Ferrari is pretty decent in the wet, and I feel I'm also pretty good in the wet, so I wouldn't mind either or.
Well, Cody, finally, is there anybody you want to thank today?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the Team Genesis for giving me this opportunity, my family watching, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. It was absolutely brilliant to watch you drive out there today. Could have fooled us. You looked in complete control out there in front of the silver field. Ladies and gentlemen, your winner in silver today, Cody Sherritt for Genesis Esports. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Austin, I would have never guessed that. So, Cody, not completely, satisfied with the pace out of the car. Completely surprising to me.
Well, it's just one of those things where as a race car driver, the car is never perfect. You might feel like the car is a perfect extension of you, but there's always one corner, especially around a place like Silverstone, where you've got so many differing corners of speed, radius, commitment levels. The car will never handle perfectly. So it's just about balancing all those things. And of course, as a race car driver, if you don't win overall, you could have always gone faster. And sometimes even the guy who wins goes, I wasn't totally happy with the car.
I do love that. I love the honesty. Well, folks, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be right back with you for round 4 out of 5 for the Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. We'll be back in the United States in upstate New York at Watkins Glen, August 5th. Pencil in the calendar. If they were close here at Silverstone, imagine what they're going to be at Watkins Glen. The championship completely deadlocked in the silver class as well. And finally, a big thank you to all of the partners that helped bring this broadcast to you. Of course, Mobileye, Fanatec, AWS, Pirelli, AK Esports, SimGrid, SRO Esports, and of course, Assetto Corsa Competizione. Austin, final thoughts today.
This race was awesome. Like I said, it had everything we could have wanted, and I can't believe coming into this that the points battle would have been closer leaving than it was coming into it. I mean, to be separated by 1 point is super impressive. To be tied overall for the lead in the Silver Championship is incredible. I'm just shocked by that. And even then, the battle for third, you got 2 drivers tied for that, and the guy in 5th place in the points overall is only 1 point behind. And if you thought Silverstone was awesome, Watkins Glen is one of my absolute favorite tracks. It's got all the high-speed corners of Silverstone and some of even the slower speed corners. It's going to be so cool.
It certainly is. You've got a runaway favorite in the pro class trying to make history, and the silver class literally could not be closer. Folks, it's been my pleasure to bring you this race with Austin Belke today. I've been Jesse Lee, and until next time, have a good night.